You're listening to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, non-profits, and more.
This is Simon. I'm still on holiday, so here's your guest host for today, Matt Zeqiri.
Hello and welcome to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast with Matt Zeqiri. Simon's unable to host today as he's been sent to prison for having a too long podcast title, so I'm standing in for him instead. A little bit about me: I'm the sole fundraiser for Chapter, a £250,000 size mental health charity in Cheshire West. I'm also a broadcast TV comedy writer performer. I lived on a boat for 3 years. I'm on the committee of the IOF Sole Fundraiser Special Interest Group, and I'm a trustee for Hope Mountain RDA, a tiny charity based in North Wales where I live with my partner, our 3 pigs, 4 hens, 2 sheep, and the wildest beast of all, our 2-year-old son, Ned. Would you rather tell us about painting this morning?
Yeah.
What did you paint? Harrowing. I'm a big fan of Simon's podcast, and I jumped at the opportunity to host. I've only ever worked with small charities, and I knew that was what I wanted this pod to be about. Fundraising for a small charity is full of challenges, but opportunities too, and I loved having the chance to catch up with some real experts in the field. So listen on to find out why agility is a key word, how sole fundraisers can stay resilient, and why a really good small charity is like a prawn. The first person I spoke to was Katie Lawson from the small but extremely noisy charity Tiny Tickers. So first of all, obviously thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me. Can you tell us a little bit about Tiny Tickers and about yourself?
Yes, so Tiny Tickers is a tiny charity. There's only 6 of us, and we work across the UK, and we help babies and families and health professionals who are all working with babies with serious heart conditions. So we're the only UK charity that works with sonographers to try and get early diagnosis, funding equipment. So yes, it's a vast remit. And I'm head of fundraising and comms. Been working with Tiny Tickers for about 1.5 years, and I must say it's absolutely wonderful. I do love it. My background was mostly with large charities, so it's been a learning curve as well.
Yeah, I bet it has. So I said earlier I was doing some snooping on LinkedIn, and I saw that you had 6 years at Bernardo's. So
yes,
I'm skipping ahead a bit in my questions, but because you brought it up, I think it's a good time to ask. What are the really main things that you notice between being a fundraiser at a behemoth like that and being at a small charity like Tiny Tickers?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there are some vast differences, as you can imagine. I think, and they're all positive and negative. I think the most positive one is that being somewhere like Tiny Tickers, you're just immediately more agile and immediately more flexible. You can pretty much react to things as they come in pretty swiftly, and the kind of chain of command, as it were, isn't there. You're not there's no sign-off processes. There's no rigmarole with them trying to get things moving quickly, which is wonderful. And then the negatives being, the main negative is probably we don't have an IT department. That would be lovely.
Right.
When things break, it's up to us.
And that presumably slows down the comms side of your role when you have
exactly.
those kinds of...
If you're having computer problems or one of the kind of platforms that we use isn't quite working, you're immediately stalled there. So that can be quite infuriating. And with things like, design work and all that, I mean, again, positive and negative, we can do a lot ourselves. It's not of a standard, that if we had a design team or a design studio, it would be. But that's both good and bad. So I think those are the main, the size brings with it different difficulties.
Yeah.
But mostly it's positive.
Yeah.
And I think, as well with Tiny Tickers, we're very lucky. We're very, got very positive support. But you do end up in your day being everything. You end up doing a lot of supporter care. You're delivering events. You're doing design work. You're updating the website. You're managing social media, which I love. But I appreciate that variety might not appeal to everyone.
Yeah, it sort of suits a particular kind of personality, doesn't it? As someone who sort of loves to have that variety rather than sticking to one kind of focus. And I completely agree. And that's part of what I love so much about my job is that you have to fill space. There's a hell of a lot of space in a small charity, isn't there? There's things that as you say, if there's no design department or if there's no IT department, it's just up to you. No one else is going to do it. So you do have to kind of spread your tendrils, don't you? And and that's really good for development for fundraisers as well, I think. So I think that I've only ever worked at small charities, but I think small charity is a brilliant place to develop professionally as a fundraiser.
Absolutely. And, at Bernardo's, I was head of events and I adored events. It was where I kind of, cut my teeth in terms of a head of position. But I do enjoy the variety with this. I'm an absolute social media geek, so this affords me to do that. And equally there are other elements of actual fundraising that I absolutely adore. Trusts and foundations, speaking to individual donors. So I get to do all of that, which I think is kind of the perfect mix for me, because it keeps it interesting.
And do you work at the office in Leeds or are you home based?
Well, interestingly, we don't have an office. The Leeds address is our PO box. We all work from home, and we have a head office that's on our Charity Commission website that's purely for Charity Commission purposes. And then a lot of our mail can go to the PO box address. And again, that's good and bad. It's excellent in terms of our overheads, home working, flexible working, part-time. It's amazing. And Tiny Tickers is really forward thinking in that respect. A lot of fundraising can be done behind the desk, essentially. And for me, working in the evenings on trust apps, it's super. It really does work.
Yeah.
And the negative being that because we have our address in terms of London as our registered address, I think some people can often assume that we're bigger than we actually are.
Yeah.
Especially when we say the word national.
Yeah.
Tiny Tickers is a national charity with a head office address in London.
Yes.
People make their own assumptions.
Yes. So do you think that is sometimes a barrier to you accessing even more funding?
Yes, it's an interesting one, the whole small charity yet national conundrum. We do work across the UK, and I think the assumption is then that we're huge, but we're not.
Yes.
So I think, we quite often, I've started more removing the word national, because I think people just assume. And, I have to put the London address as it's our proper registered address. It's the address of one of our trustees. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they just make an assumption.
That's interesting that you're sort of deleting the word national, because I guess it's not actually doing any heavy lifting in terms of getting people to donate. Although I suppose what it says is that it's you're not local. Your reach is quite far, even if you are a small charity. But it's I find that doing the opposite of that can be quite useful, and really leaning into the smallness of the charity and
Yes.
really making that a strength rather than a weakness. So is that, I mean, I presume that's something that you
Exactly.
find success with as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think when we do get that conversation, saying, look, there's only 6 of us, one employee is full-time and that's the CEO, I think people are absolutely shocked that, we're delivering what we're doing and we're seemingly bigger than we actually are. So I think it's a real strength. I've used the word small charity at all points. I've even started using the word tiny. And I'm not, as well with the overheads, it's interesting as well because we don't have a head office, and that thus therefore means that, more of the donation can go to our actual work. However, we need to be careful there, the balancing act of, core costs and operational overheads. They need to exist to run a charity. So, it's quite a fine balance that we have to get there.
Yeah, that's interesting. What immediately springs to my mind is, as somebody who works for a mental health charity, when you say you don't have an office, and obviously the flexibility that brings is good, but can it be quite isolating as well for each of the members of staff?
It really isn't. The amazing for tiny tickers being so small, their use or our use of digital is amazing. Every Monday we have Skype call with the team, so you're face to face. During the week we all have various catch ups on Skype as well. We also use Slack, so we have a variety of channels about different work topics. But we also have like water cooler chat on Slack, so we get the silly gifs and the silly, chat going around. And I think when I started, that was one thing that I was concerned about. But there's a real kind of feeling of teamwork, and there's a real feeling of team because we embrace digital so well through our internal comms. So it really isn't that isolating. Every so often I need to physically see someone, so I will get myself out to a meeting, or the Institute of Fundraising groups up here are great for that. So I'm based up in Edinburgh. But yeah, it's less isolating than perhaps I thought when I took on the role.
So I think I first heard of Tiny Tickers when I saw your chief exec, John. Is it John Arnold?
Yes.
Doing a talk at the Institute of Fundraising's Northwest conference, and he made a presentation about being a small charity and sort of making a big noise. He talked a little bit about the odd national TV campaign that you guys have done, and sort of countless appearances in national newspapers. And that's all in spite of a turnover of about £200,000 a year. Is that sort of accurate? So how is this possible? How do you do it? Why are you making the rest of us look bad? And how does it help with your fundraising?
Gosh, I don't know. I think a lot of it is playing on the small charity side. I would say that it's taken me a while to appreciate that maybe sometimes a less formal approach is best. Bernardo's everything, I think when you're in a bigger charity, it's all quite formal, and there's structure and there's processes. I think we benefit because we're just able to be a bit quicker, a bit more informal with our comms. So when we're, emailing, for instance, the Daily Mail with press releases and all that, it's ultimately myself that's approaching them. It's myself that's the gatekeeper of all the info they need, and it's myself that's organising all the logistics and in contact with the interviewees. I don't know. It just works. There's a lot about it being the right place at the right time as well. And it's a lot of work, I would say. We had a feature in the Daily Mail. We were front page on the Daily Express at Christmas. And it is phenomenal.
Yeah. And do you see sort of upticks in sort of donor engagement after you've had these things out there?
Yes, I think, that's an extremely difficult one to quantify. And I would also say it's extremely difficult to quantify when you're such a small charity and time is of the essence. However, we definitely feel that we're on the upward trajectory in terms of, we can quite easily monitor that through growth of our social media channels, and they are increasing all the time. I think as well with, monitoring website traffic and everything like that, we are just getting a bigger audience. And more opportunities seem to be coming our way as well. And just in terms of people inquiring about whether or not they can support us, random one-off donations. So absolutely, I think it's all just almost like a snowball effect. It all adds to it, and I think we're all feeling that there's just more activity being done. There's more fundraisers doing events for us. There does just seem to be more going on.
But just more and more.
More and more and more.
Yeah, is it sort of exponential?
It's coming off my keyboard.
Yeah, it's sort of picking up momentum then. So
exactly.
So is the goal for Tiny Tickers to not be tiny forever, or do you think that? Would you worry? Would you worry that you might lose something if you weren't tiny?
That's so funny. It's always my concern, which is ironic, really. I know. What do we do? I mean, it'd be wonderful to be bigger. We can help more families. We can have more. We can, help more wee ones. We can do more with detecting congenital heart defects. I mean, in terms of congenital heart defects is the most common congenital birth defect. And also congenital heart defects kills more children than all childhood cancers combined up to the age of 14. So, really, we need to be bigger than we currently are to accommodate all that work and do all the work we need to with our beneficiaries and make sure that babies and their families are getting the best possible care. However, on the other side, one of our massive USPs is that we're tiny, we're approachable, we know a lot of our parents by first names, we know a lot of our donors by first names, we get a lot of kind of conversation and dialogue because we're so close to them. And absolutely, my concern would be that if we grow bigger, we become kind of a bit more faceless.
A bit harder to imagine someone leaning into the concept of being a medium-sized charity. Be like, we're really medium-sized.
Yes, exactly. So that is tricky. I think actually there was one more thing.
Go ahead.
In terms of challenges, the other challenge that maybe I learned a bit later than was perhaps ideal is the juggle between, project funding and core funding. So if you're juggling, let's say, a capital appeal versus actually getting in operational, money to look after running costs, I think that became a huge challenge when you're so small. We're very successful at both. I think when the project funding was more needed and when that was front of mind and we were doing a big appeal, it was actually very easy to lose sight of the fact that we needed in core. And that's just again down to the size of our charity, the ability. It was kind of one or the other. And I think that it was really interesting in terms of that mix.
Do you have that classic conflict when you're thinking, are you chasing the funding a little bit? When you're sort of going, well, this funder is particularly keen on funding projects like this. So how can we kind of turn our work into that? And it becomes a bit of a sort of a sticky wicket. That
in the past, and I am very careful not to do that. If there's something that can be tweaked slightly, then great. But I'm very careful to stick to the projects that I know that we need to do strategically, and we stick to those because, as you say, otherwise we're chasing funding and we're also giving ourselves more work to do in terms of actually administering what it is that we're applying for. So yeah, I try and really stay away from that. You do need to be able to say no. That's gonna, the time that's going to take to do that, the time that's going to take together. It's not only putting in the application. As a small charity, you're very close, if not on some of the projects. I'm doing the operations of delivering the actual equipment and all of, delivering that whole thing as well. And, if you did get the funding, sometimes there's a question mark over, whether you would actually be able to deliver what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it all comes back to leadership, really, doesn't it? And what is the vision of the charity? And that gives you an anchor, doesn't it? Because you can look at something and say, well, does that actually help us achieve our objectives? Yes or no? And if it's no, then it's not worth the contortions, is it?
And I think being small, you are very aware of that because you're very close to it, and you maybe have more of a buy-in in terms of the vision and the mission and where you're going. I think that's sometimes danger with the bigger charities, is that, you're kind of a bit more removed from that. And so, senior management have to get the buy-in a lot more and have to work a lot more on buy-in. Whereas I kind of feel the six of us, we all get it. We all know where we're going. We all know what we're doing.
I'm going to keep on using the important sounding News at 10 style transition sound throughout this episode because it's just very funny to me. So that was Katie Lawson, who's got a really interesting perspective on the differences between huge and tiny charities. And despite being used to working in a massive fundraising team, she's still feeling very well supported within a much smaller charity. But not all fundraisers can say the same. It's very common to feel isolated in your role and feel under pressure to carry the burden of the organisation's income by yourself. Julia Worthington is a vastly experienced fundraising consultant and coach. I spoke to her about what small charity fundraisers can do to keep things in perspective. When you work with fundraisers who work at small charities, what are the common issues for them? What are the common challenges that crop up?
I think, particularly in small charities, they're often doing a bit of everything. So they'll get dragged into lots of things that aren't really fundraising, but there's not anybody else to do them. So they've often got a strategy to deliver and an income to deliver, but also they want to support their colleagues as well. So then they'll end up often overwhelmed with the amount of work that they've got to do, generating income, but also all the other stuff, awareness raising, going out and doing carnivals and bucket collections and things like that, just can all get a bit much.
So sort of spreading yourself too thin is something that happens quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's great to be part of that team so you know what's going on, because when you then go out and do make an ask, you know often where the money's going because you might have been involved in some of the service delivery. So I work with a small charity quite local to me, and the fundraisers actually end up on the front desk on reception at times. And so they see the service users coming in and get to meet them, but that means they pick up case studies and they also pick up challenges. So then when they go out and make the case, they can make a really great case because they're living and breathing it every day. But then also you become part of that service delivery team almost, so they rely on you and you still got that other stuff to do as well. And then it's more difficult to say, no, I can't do that, because there's an expectation that you will always step in and sit on reception or help out with if something kicks off, saying, I know somebody works in a homeless centre and, quite often things will kick off and she'll get used to get dragged into that. She doesn't get dragged into it anymore because she have made a determined effort to put some boundaries in place over what she does and doesn't do. Not because, she's being superior in any way, or that's not my job, but actually she's got to deliver quite a high income, and if she doesn't spend most of her time on that, it won't happen.
So you sort of mentioned that this fundraiser has had to focus on the fundraising because obviously without that there's no organisation there. but that also brings just a huge amount of pressure, doesn't it? And especially if you are a sole fundraiser of a small charity, it's easy to feel sort of total responsibility for the future of the organisation. So how can fundraisers deal with that pressure? Because that's a lot.
I mean, that's one of the really big challenges that I think, as you say, fundraisers have to deal with. And it's often part of their personality as well, that they feel that responsibility. And I think the best way to deal with that is having those boundaries. So having that point where you go, actually, do you know what? I need to say no to this. I can say no in a very positive way, but I do need to say no to this. Strategy helps with that. So actually having a strategy for your fundraising in terms of when people start coming to you with lots of ideas of, have you thought of this, or maybe we should do this, or I'm going to book us a table at the local village fete. If you've got that strategy in place, that kind of can help prevent that happening. Because people are usually just trying to be helpful at that point. They think, oh, it'd be a great idea if we did this. But that can lead to a certain amount of overwhelm. But also in the terms of what is my job role here, I do need to bring money in. But equally, the trustees need to do their job properly, and the CEO needs to do their job properly. And it's kind of seeing yourself as part of a team that's responsible for what happens, as opposed to, I'm the fundraiser, and if I don't bring the money in, it fails. Well, yes, in some ways, but also if the money's not spent well, if the service that you deliver aren't services that are required, so that, people going out and actually scoping out what is required, so you don't end up just chasing money. Having that mission drift, having a clear group that you're going to work with. So everybody has a certain responsibility. And I think, as you say, sometimes fundraisers feel like, oh, if I don't bring the money in, then people won't be here. But actually other people in the organisation have that as well. The money has to be managed well. Your finance team have a responsibility, or your finance person, or your accountant, or your treasurer. All those people have responsibility to ensure that the organisation's well run. And I suppose you could equate it to, if you think about a business, a business doesn't fall just on the people selling the product.
No.
The product has to be a good product that people want to buy, and all the costs have to be managed well. So it doesn't just, the responsibility isn't just down to the people who go out selling it. And I think the same is true of fundraising.
So I think you're, apart from being, vastly experienced across all kinds of fundraising, you're also really interested in the mental health side of things, aren't you? And something that particularly comes up a lot is resilience in fundraising. Yeah. And what does resilience mean, and why is it important for fundraisers?
Good question. What does resilience mean? And I think it means lots of different things to lots of different organisations, and it's kind of one of the buzzwords at the moment. A friend of mine's a head teacher, and virtually every time she opens her mouth, she uses the word resilience. So for me, resilience is about having the capacity to take the knocks, whatever those knocks are. So that knock might be not getting a grant, or it might be it rains all day when you're supposed to have an event outdoors, and so the footfall isn't great, or somebody's promised you a donation and then for whatever reason it doesn't arrive, volunteers not turning up when you're expecting them, all those things that can happen to us as fundraisers. Having that capacity to take that and think, okay, how do I move on from here? That's how I'd explain resilience.
Yeah.
But outside of the sort of professional development kind of thing, there's also the what things can you do personally, just leave work on time.
Yes.
A couple of times a week or 3 times a week, make sure you take a lunch break. Get away from your desk. If you can, walk outside in the open air, whether that's in the rain or the sunshine. Seeing the greenery is good for our mental health. Go for a walk, go for a run. But just, putting those things in place that can give you that framework to build resilience.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling, things like just having decaf tea or coffee, or reducing the amount of sugar you're having. And it's it's called lots of things. It's called self-care, it's called resilience, it's called building better mental health, but all those things are important to sort of build that capacity to take the knocks.
Yeah. That's really interesting about being able to do those things if you can. I know that quite a common problem for sole fundraisers and for fundraisers in small charities, luckily not for me, but I know that it is quite widespread, is not really having a fundraising ally at your organisation and having to sort of justify fundraising to senior management and your trustees. Who might have unrealistic expectations about what can be done and even what fundraising actually is. So do you have any tips for how to survive that kind of situation? Is it something you've come across?
I always used to find if I said, let me do a pilot on something, that would be always be a good way of getting something tried rather than trying to push through a full 3-year project. So let me pilot it in a particular town or with a particular group of people. Getting some evidence is sometimes useful from other organisations. And don't back whoever it is, whether it's a trustee or senior management, don't back them into a corner. Because sometimes we get so passionate about what we want and what we think is best for the organisation, or what we have evidence to prove is best for the organisation, that we will back somebody into a corner. And the only way they can come out is fighting. So then they will fight you tooth and nail not to allow you to do what you want to do. Because if they don't fight, then they have to admit defeat. And people who tend to be in sort of senior management roles or, trustees often aren't used to admitting defeat or being that humble. So it's kind of, like we would with donors, we try to understand their drives and motivations. Try and understand the drives and motivations behind your trustees or your senior management team. And if that's they like to win awards, this is going to be an award-winning project. If they like celebrities, it's like we're going to get some local celebrities along, but obviously we want you to meet them and speak to them, and just what are people's drives for doing what they do.
It's about sort of finding what makes that particular person tick, and
and we're really good at that with donors and supporters usually, but we often forget to do it internally.
Another one of your many areas of expertise is corporate fundraising, isn't it?
It's what, sorry?
Is corporate fundraising, and how can that work for small charities in particular? Because I can see, speak from my own perspective of trying to get business involved for chapter, and I know that there are some things that actually are an advantage when you're a small charity, but it can be quite tough, can't it, when you're going up against charities who might have much more resources, much higher profile.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing what I do now, so consultancy and coaching for fundraisers for 7 years, and so I've worked with lots of organisations, big ones and small ones, and I think the main thing is never to think that the other organisation is better than you just because they're bigger, or better than you because they've got more profile, because 9 times out of 10 they aren't.
Right.
Just because they've got a great profile does not mean they're great corporate fundraisers. Or just because they're big, it doesn't mean they're going to be great at corporate relationships. Then there's disadvantages and advantages of being both large and small. One of the massive disadvantages with large charities is the whole communication thing. So you've got somebody in London who wants to take over corporate relationships once they get to a certain size, and you've got somebody locally in Chester, say, who's like, I've got this great relationship, we're just about to come up to a £15,000 size partnership, and London say, right, that's ours now. So it shifts to London. The person on the ground locally who's been dealing with the corporate isn't involved anymore frequently, or is just told to go and pick the odd check up, but isn't doing the account management. And those relationships, in my experience, don't last, because the person in Chester who's at the corporate was like, well, they never talked to me in London. I'm only a 15 grand partnership. They're also managing $250,000 and $3 million partnerships. They're not interested in my 15 grand. So as a small local charity, when you're going in and saying, look, I'll be your person on the ground. I'll be the person you're talking to all the time. You don't need to worry about somebody in London coming and taking this off us. We'll work together and we will make it the best it can be. You can just pick up the phone, I can pop in. So there's always advantages that you can sell about locally. You can sell how your costs are much lower because you haven't got big fancy offices in London, or you understand what's going on the ground locally, so you understand what the local challenges are because you're actually working in the city and you're seeing it yourself as well, so you can help them overcome those. So I think for me, it's about not looking at what other people have got or you perceive they have got, because often they haven't got what we think they have, and they often haven't got it all sorted. It's about, okay, what can I offer that really will make us special? And I think I love working with small charities because one of the great things I think they have is flexibility. So if they see something challenging is happening within their local area, they can quite quickly create something that works and will overcome that challenge. Whereas if it's a bigger organisation, it has to kind of go up all the different levels and be agreed at lots of different levels.
Yeah.
It could take 6 to 12 months before they agree a new project. Whereas a smaller charity could have a project up and running in 2-3 months.
I'm well on board with you with that. And a word that keeps popping up as I speak to more and more small charities and people who've worked with small charities is agile. And, small charities can be very reactive very quickly. And it takes large charities much longer.
Really creative as well.
Okay, so finally, a chance for some self-promotion. As if I've not been doing a good enough job promoting you already. Can you tell us about how your coaching can help fundraisers at small charities? Because I've found your coaching groups really, really useful. But I just thought I'd get the get the story from you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much expertise in that group when the group comes together. It's only 6 people, so that gives you that sort of, small but safe place where you can share stuff. But it also means there's expertise in the room that can be shared, and people can go, yeah, that's tough, I agree. The different sectors. I mean, I really like the fact that we sometimes get some people from the arts sector there. We've got somebody who comes regularly at the moment who's from the independent school sector, and then we've got our cause-led charities, which again are all completely different. And everybody brings so much different expertise within that and within their own how long they've been in fundraising. So, yeah, I never know what's going to come out of the session, and that's what I love about it. And when somebody walks away and says, oh, it was great when so-and-so said such and such, or when you, Julia, got up and drew something on the board which wasn't part of the session, but just sort of came out, and that was my takeaway thing. That's what I love about it, that although there's a structure to it, there's still those, you never know what somebody's going to take away from it.
If people want to find out more about you, Julia, and your services, then where can they go?
I've got a website, and that's www.amberconsulting.org.uk, and I'm on LinkedIn as Julia Worthington, and I'm on Twitter as @AmberConsults.
Marvellous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today, Julia.
Thank you for asking me.
Getting your hands dirty in the delivery side of things is clearly a double-edged sword for the small charity fundraiser. On the one hand, it's good for team building and feeling a connection to your cause, but on the other, as Julia says, it can lead to feeling overwhelmed and eating into the time you could be spending, fundraising. My final guest is Lisa Forbes from HIP in Cheshire, a teeny-weeny £45,000 charity. I didn't have far to travel because HIP share a building with Chapter. Lisa's nice, but she's very bitter and jealous about Chapter, mainly because our office has windows. And I'm not talking about the operating system. I'm talking about actual windows. Lisa from HIP in Cheshire, what does HIP stand for?
So HIP stands for Head Injured People. So we are a charity just based in Cheshire, so a small charity which supports people who have acquired a head injury or a brain injury. So maybe people who've had a stroke or a brain hemorrhage or had a fall or had an accident. So the sort of thing that can happen to anybody but can massively change your life.
And it's a small charity, isn't it?
It is. So there's myself and my colleague, and that's it. We're the only people employed by the charity. So we're both part-time. We do 15 hours each, and often those 15 hours become many more hours, but that's fine, and that's how it goes. But we work really flexibly because we have to, because each week is different. So between us, we cover all the coffee mornings, all of our trips. I focus on fundraising, and ED focuses on making sure that we're all operationally correct and that all our policies and procedures and everything are in place.
Yeah, and although you're the fundraiser, I bet you spend a lot of time doing non-fundraising things as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm waiting for a phone call to see if we can get a minibus for our trip next Tuesday, because we only booked a small one because we didn't want to waste any money, and of course now that's full, but we don't want to say no to any of our members. So yes, and arranging the lunches, and on Tuesday I'll be there on the trip and helping everybody. But that's good because it keeps you grounded and focused, and I know the members, I know how much it means to them, and so that's what helps me to fundraise and keep going.
Yeah, so you're really connected with the delivery work, aren't you? You actually do some of it.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I don't think I would want to just sit at a desk all the time and just focus on targets and being a fundraiser. I think it's important to be involved in everything.
Yeah. So HIP is like a smaller charity even than Chapter. And I think of Chapter as a small charity. When we were having a chat last week about it, you made me laugh when I was like, Chapter's small charity, I'm the only fundraiser. You were like, boo-hoo!
Exactly.
Like, we're down the road and we're sort of even smaller. So how do you see the sort of, what are the differences in scale, like even between you and an organisation like Chapter as you see it?
There's less of us, there's less resource, there's maybe more pressure to make everything happen.
And you've only got 15 hours a week
and there's
to
only
cram it all into.
15 hours, so there is a point when my husband says, right, enough's enough now, that's it. So you do have to, find that balance. But I think being small for us is our advantage as well, because we do get to know our members, it is personal, they get to know us. When I go and talk to companies, I think I can portray that as well. And literally every penny that comes through the door we know about, and we know where we're spending it, so it makes everything really visible and transparent, and people can see if they make a donation of £285, then that's going to pay for my minibus on Tuesday taking people from Crewe to the Imperial War Museum. So we can play it to our advantage as well, that it's small. But obviously when you have a whinge and go on about the fact that you're the only fundraiser, but then you've got all those other people.
And I'm also there 37 hours a week.
You've got windows in your office. And
we've got windows in our office, and you don't. You live in a little pit.
Yeah, exactly. But we did used to operate in a stationary cupboard, so this is quite a step up for us.
Yeah. And what about you as a fundraiser? You were telling me a bit about your journey, and like most people in fundraising, or like most people who fundraise for small charities, I think, it wasn't a sort of, you didn't wake up one morning and go, I think I want to be a fundraiser now.
No, it wasn't a career goal, but my background has been very much around sales, which I guess is useful, so speaking to people, not being nervous about approaching people, and that does come from having that sales background. But I always worked for good companies and sold things that I believed in. I'm not like a blag merchant. So that still works today in terms of what I'm doing. I've worked for big corporate companies, I've worked in project management, I've worked in a delivery of events as well, in a different project that I was involved in. So all those skills are really useful in terms of what I'm doing now. But for me, it's more just being able to speak to people, tell them what we do, having ideas, and then turning those into something. And that's why I like the role that I'm doing now, and that's why I made a conscious decision perhaps to work for a charity, work for a smaller charity, bring all those skills to it, and just see what happens. But I enjoy it, and I enjoy the mix.
So is it sort of the ability to have an impact and see decisions that you make very quickly influence the organisation that is so appealing, rather than like being a big corporate where you're sort of
exactly where just to authorise, I don't know, tea and biscuits takes a long time or whatever, whereas we just have to roll with it. And my next project that I'm working on at the moment is a a nice afternoon tea. So, I've found a nice venue. I'm looking at people to speak there who have got a relevance to us and what we do. I'm looking for people to put goodie bags together. So there's so many things that you need to pull together, which I enjoy. But yeah, you've got to have the confidence, I think, to go out and make that happen and be cheeky really and ask, look, this is what I'm doing. Would you be prepared to sponsor our drinks reception or whatever? And people will say no, as we were discussing before, and sometimes that is a bit depressing, but then you just have to think, well, that's fine. And I understand that not everybody can pay for these things or wants to buy into what we're doing, so you just have to move on and be resilient.
But do you think you sort of can get away with it a little bit more as a small charity rather than if you were sort of going up to someone from Cancer Research UK or someone?
Possibly, because there's probably loads of procedures that they would have to go through before they could maybe even get to that step, whereas to be fair, I just have an idea, run it past Edie, and she goes, yeah, that's absolutely fine, and then we sort of go for it. And obviously we always want to be professional, and but yeah, there probably is that advantage, maybe that there's no bureaucracy. Obviously we have trustees that we have to report to, but they trust what we do and what we deliver, and know that ultimately we're just trying to do the best for the charity.
So what the hell did I mean by that prawn comment right near the beginning? Why should a small charity try to be like a freaking crustacean? The tiger pistol shrimp is found in the tropical waters of the Pacific. One snap of its pincer can create an air bubble that travels at more than 60 miles an hour, making a bang of more than 200 decibels, stunning nearby prey. Despite being only 5 centimetres long, the tiger pistol is the second loudest member of the animal kingdom. I believe small charities should try to be more tiger pistol. Because of the unique closeness of delivery work and fundraising, small charity fundraisers are blessed with a golden opportunity to tell a compelling story about our cause, because we've got front row seats. Yes, we are small, but we are many. 97% of the UK's charities are classed as small charities. We wouldn't be here if we weren't good at what we do. So lean into it. Be small but noisy. Be a tiger pistol. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't, whatever, you're big enough to make your own decisions.
Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. For discounts on Simon's best-selling online fundraising courses, go to www.changefundraising.com/training and use coupon code podcast. Complete them in your own time, wherever you want. Get busy living or get busy buying.